Okay, so today we're gonna dive into something that's super important, I think, for anyone out there who relies on accurate equipment, whether you're in a lab or a factory or even just, using tools around the
Yeah,
house.
absolutely. And this is really about ensuring that the things we depend on are actually reliable every time we use them.
Right, exactly. So we're talking about the Validation Master Plan, or VMP. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, VMP is crucial in my work. It's essentially the roadmap for making sure that all the instruments, systems, even software, everything's working exactly as it should be.
So it's not just, hoping for the best, it's a whole system.
Definitely a whole system. And that's what we're going to break down today, how it all works, what it means for quality and reliability, and why it matters so much.
Exactly. Our mission in this deep dive is to understand the purpose and what a VMP actually contains, based on how it's defined. So first off, can you just give us a clear definition of what a VMP is?
Yeah, so in the simplest terms, a VMP, a validation master plan, is the document that outlines a company's entire program for validation work.
Okay, so it's like the master plan for making sure everything's validated.
Exactly. It lays out all the details for how a company will ensure that its equipment, instruments, systems, processes, all of that are consistently meeting the required standards. It's really a blueprint for quality and reliability.
Got it. So it's not just about like one-off checks. It's about
Absolutely.
the whole process.
I mean, it's a comprehensive approach, and there are key elements that are always part of a good VMP.
Okay, so what are those essential pieces that someone like me needs to know?
So first off, a VMP will detail exactly what validation work needs to be done. This includes things like specific tests, procedures, acceptance criteria, basically all the steps to prove that something is working correctly.
So it's not just like, yeah, we checked it. It's like, here's exactly what we checked and how.
Precisely. It's all laid out,
Yeah.
very specific. Then the second crucial element is timelines. The VMP sets clear timelines for when all these validation activities need to happen.
That makes sense. Otherwise, it's easy for things to slip through the cracks.
Absolutely. And that's why the VMP is so important.
Yeah.
It provides that structure and ensures that validation happens on schedule. The third key piece is responsibilities. The VMP clearly defines who's accountable for each part of the plan.
So it's not just a document that sits on a shelf. It's actually put into action with people owning different parts of it.
Exactly. It's a living document that drives real activity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so powerful in ensuring quality and reliability.
Now, how does this master plan, the VMP, connect to those terms? We hear a lot: qualification, validation, calibration. Where do they fit in?
Yeah, great question. So those are the actual activities, the hands-on work that's done to ensure things are working, right? Think of qualification as proving that something's installed correctly and meets the basic requirements.
Okay, makes sense.
Then validation is about confirming that the equipment or system actually does what it's supposed to do in your specific context, your environment, your processes. And calibration, that's all about ensuring that measurements are accurate.
So those are the individual pieces of the puzzle, and the VMP is like the picture on the box showing how they all fit together.
Exactly. The VMP provides the framework, the strategy.
Yeah.
It ensures that qualification, validation, and calibration aren't just happening randomly, but are part of a coordinated system to guarantee consistent reliability.
Okay. So to sum up for our listeners, a VMP is the document that lays out a company's whole strategy for making sure its equipment, instruments, and systems are accurate and dependable. It does this by detailing the validation work, setting timelines, and assigning responsibility. It's basically the foundation for reliable operations.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And thinking about it, this idea of a VMP, this structured approach to ensuring reliability, it's not just for labs and factories, right?
Absolutely not. It's really a valuable concept for anything where consistency and dependability matter.
Okay, so you're putting together your validation master plan,
Right.
and you want to be sure you're following the right guidelines.
Uh-huh.
You've probably heard of PICS PI 006 WHO TRS 961
Yeah, those are big ones.
and Eudralex Volume 4,
Of course.
but which one matters the most?
Exactly. And how do they all fit together
That's what we're going to untangle today
in this deep dive?
into validation guidelines.
Let's start with PICS.
Okay, so what is PICS anyway?
Well, it stands for the Pharmaceutical Inspection Convention and Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But basically, it's a big international group of drug regulatory agencies.
Like a club for regulators?
Yeah, kind of. And they all work together to make sure drugs are safe and high quality.
Makes sense.
So they put out this document, PI 000s.
Which is all about validation.
Exactly. It's like their collective wisdom on how to do validation, right?
So if you follow PI 000s,
You're good in the eyes of a lot of different regulatory bodies.
so that's a good place to start.
Yeah, it's kind of like a shortcut.
Because you're already meeting the expectations of a whole bunch of countries.
Right, so you're less likely to run into problems later on.
Gotcha.
Now let's talk about WHO TRS 961.
Okay, WHO, that's the World Health Organization.
Right, they're all about global health.
And TRS 961 is their take on validation.
Yeah, they put out these technical reports on all sorts of topics related to medicines.
So this one focuses on making sure medicines are safe and effective.
Exactly, and it's especially important if you're working in countries that follow WHO guidelines.
Which is a lot of countries.
Yeah, especially in emerging markets,
So it's a global standard.
pretty much.
All right, then there's Eudralex Volume 4.
Ah, yes, the EU's rule book.
EU, that's the European Union.
Right, and they're very strict about drug quality.
So Eudralex is like their Bible.
Yeah, Volume 4 specifically focuses on good manufacturing practices, or GMP.
And that includes validation.
Absolutely. You can't sell drugs in the EU without following those GMP guidelines.
And they're very specific.
Oh yeah, they leave no room for interpretation.
So if you're targeting the EU market,
Eudralex Volume 4 is non-negotiable.
okay, so we've got these three big guidelines.
PICS PI 006
WHO, TRS 961.
and Eudralex Volume 4,
They all cover validation.
but from different angles.
Right. PICS is about international best practices,
WHO is a global health standard.
and Eudralex is the law in the EU.
But here's the interesting thing.
They actually agree on a lot of the core principles.
Yeah, they all emphasize good planning
Thorough risk assessment.
and keeping really good records.
So even though they come from different
The
places,
fundamental ideas are pretty similar.
so how do you know which one to follow?
Well, it really depends on where you're selling your drugs.
If it's the EU.
You gotta follow Eudralex.
If you're working with WHO countries,
TRS 961 is your guide
and PICS is a good general framework.
that can help you meet the requirements of multiple regions.
MP lays out some foundational principles with the quality policy and the validation policy.
Yeah, those are key. Those are the non-negotiables, the core commitments to getting things right.
Right. It's like setting the stage.
Exactly, setting the stage.
But it's not just about, saying we're committed to quality. It's about actively looking for potential problems.
Absolutely, and that's where the quality risk management policy comes in.
Yeah, that's such an important part.
It's huge. You're not just hoping for the best. You're actively identifying and mitigating risks before they become issues.
And how does that actually work in practice? I mean, when you're talking about such a complex system, how do you even begin to anticipate all the potential problems?
Well, a big part of it is having a structured process, and that's what we see in sections like the validation qualification schematic flow and the validation and qualification approach.
Okay, so it's like a roadmap.
Exactly. It's a roadmap. It lays out the steps to prove that everything from the facility itself to the utilities to the equipment meets the required standards.
So you're talking about things like facility qualification, and validation of utilities, those sorts of things.
Exactly. You need to make sure the building itself is suitable for its intended purpose. You need to validate the water, the air, the HVAC systems, all of that.
Right. And then there's the equipment qualification and the laboratory instruments and equipment.
Yeah, those are critical. You can have a great facility and perfect utilities, but if your equipment isn't up to snuff, you're not going to produce quality products.
And it's not just about the hardware, right? You need the right people, too.
Absolutely. Personnel qualification is key. You can have the best equipment in the world, but if you don't have skilled and qualified people operating, it's not going to matter.
So true. So we've covered the facility, the utilities, the equipment, and the people. What else is there?
Well, now we get into the heart of it, the products and the processes.
Okay, so that's where products and process validation comes in.
This section focuses on proving that the manufacturing process consistently produces products that meet the required specifications.
And there's this interesting concept of exhibit batches process validation.
Yeah, that's essentially a test run.
Yeah.
You produce a small batch of product using the defined process, and you rigorously test it to make sure it meets all the requirements.
So it's like a proof of concept before going into full-scale production.
Exactly. You want to be absolutely sure that your process is robust and reliable before you start churning out product.
Makes sense. So what are some of the other key pieces of this puzzle?
Well, cleaning validation is a big one.
Right.
You need to prove that you can effectively clean your equipment to prevent any cross-contamination between different products.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
And then there's analytical method validation, which ensures that your testing methods are accurate and reliable. You need to be confident that you're getting good data.
And I see there's also a section on hold time study.
Yeah, that's all about figuring out how long you can store materials without compromising their quality. It's important for things like raw materials, intermediate products, and even finished goods.
So it's really a cradle-to-grave approach to quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to consider every stage of the product life cycle.
It's also interesting to see how they've incorporated modern elements like computerized system validation.
Yeah, that's a big one these days. So much of the manufacturing process relies on software and computerized systems.
So you need to make sure those systems are reliable and secure.
Exactly. You don't want a software glitch to bring your entire operation to a halt.
And then there's the vendor qualification program.
Right. You need to make sure that your suppliers are also meeting your quality standards.
Because a weak link in the supply chain can impact the entire process.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
Then we have the supporting elements like change control.
Yeah, that's all about managing changes to the process or the product. You don't want to make changes willy-nilly. You need a system to evaluate the impact of any proposed change.
And there are the SOPs, the standard operating procedures.
Right, those are the step-by-step instructions that everyone follows to ensure consistency and quality.
And of course, training is essential to make sure that everyone knows how to do their job properly.
Absolutely. And then you have things like environment monitoring to make sure that the manufacturing environment is controlled, and preventive maintenance calibration to keep the equipment in tip-top shape.
It's really a holistic approach to quality.
It is. It's about creating a culture of quality where everyone is focused on doing things right.
And to make sure everyone's on the same page, there's even a section on terms and definitions.
Right. You need to make sure that everyone understands the terminology and the concepts.
And then finally, there's the list of annexure, the revision history, and the references.
Yeah, those are important for traceability and documentation. You need to be able to track how the document has evolved over time and what sources were used to develop it.
So for you, the listener, you can see that a VMP is so much more than just a document.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a framework, a philosophy, a way of life almost.
It really is. It's about building quality into every aspect of the operation.
And what this VMP reveals to me is the incredible level of rigor and interconnectedness that's required to ensure quality in these kinds of operations.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Every element, every detail, every person plays a role.
And it all comes together to create a system that's reliable and trustworthy.
It really makes you appreciate all the work that goes into making sure the things we rely on are safe and effective.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, but it's absolutely essential.
Well, thanks for diving into this with me today. It's been really fascinating.
It has been.
And for you, the listener, I'll leave you with this thought. Given all the complexities and the intricate details that we've discussed, what does this tell us about the level of trust that we place in these systems and the people who design and operate them?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks for listening.